What's up, family, friends, and community? This is another video, and in this one, I want to talk a little bit about how I want to talk about a moment that actually shook me or helped shake me out of my silent atheism. Many of you know that I spent 10 years as an atheist without saying anything to much of anybody outside of my immediate family. So I want to share something that actually shook me out of that. Before I do, please make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell, consider joining one of our community entry points, such as Patreon or our YouTube membership community. And we have merch, we really do. And yeah, and we're looking for volunteers. All right, excuse me. Now that I've hit that, let's kind of jump into this. So, um, about maybe 4 or 5 years ago, I was reading a book by Sam Harris called Letter to a Christian Nation. And I came across a paragraph in that book. And I'm going to read that paragraph. Okay, so forgive me. I'm looking off screen to my notes at this moment. But it is therefore not an exaggeration to say that if the city of New York were suddenly replaced by a ball of fire, some significant percentage of the American population would see a silver lining in the subsequent mushroom cloud, as it would suggest to them that the best thing that is ever going to happen is about to happen: the return of Christ. If you are one of these people and you anticipate a rapture, it is worth reflecting on the fact that, like any tribalistic worldview, this belief implies the suffering of nearly everyone on earth. Imagine the suffering that would be visited upon the world if the long awaited transformation of the living and the dead did not occur. Imagine how sadistic you would appear in the eyes of the world if you continued to savor the thought of this cataclysm, even as the earth began to rumble and the sky went dark with ash. I remember my first time reading that paragraph thinking, he's not right. He's not wrong. He is not wrong. And it is something that I had never really engaged and thought about. But yes, from my own church experience, I've been connected with people who believe like this. At one point, I could have been convinced of this. At one point, let's just say something cataclysmic happened on our planet at one point in my life because of my theological attachments. I could have possibly believed that it was the will of God. But I mean, we already do that. I mean, even for those of you who are believers, we've been walking through Bible study with an ex-pastor and looking at some of these scriptures that we used to attach ourselves to. That's what you're already doing when you look at stories like Noah's flood and you say, no, this was a good thing because it's God's will, right? So when I read that chapter, I was like, holy snap, because I remember Pascal's wager is like a big thing. Even people who don't know who Pascal is and don't know what wager means, everybody's kind of using it, at least in my context, as far as why to be a Christian. Because the idea is, what's the worst that can happen? I mean, if you believe, and you do good, you go to heaven. You know what I'm saying? And if you don't believe, you might go to hell. So why risk that? Well, I think that is an incredibly oversimplified view of looking at this, and it's kind of very childish because it completely superimposes this idea of an entity that you cannot demonstrate while completely overlooking the needs of very real human beings that you see every day. So yeah, that kind of shook me a little bit out of my silent atheism because I realized, no, when you really ask this question, what's the worst that can happen? It's already happening. And even reading this message, reading this paragraph from Sam Harris, he's speaking of something in the future, but I still think of Y2K and how many people literally got misled out of their finances in belief that God was coming to destroy the earth and they would be saved and the rest of the earth would burn. You have to really consider what that does to a person's mental health psychologically and their social health. How how are you going to be able to engage healthy relationships with other people if you're secretly believing that one day they're going to die a horrible death if they don't choose your belief system? You are not a healthy person if that is your worldview. And I get maybe 300 years ago, we wouldn't have had the audacity to say such a thing. But now I think we have a responsibility to say such a thing because it's actually worse than that. It's actually worse than just if if a catastrophic event happens on Earth, which we've seen. I remember several years ago, maybe over a decade ago, a horrible tsunami hit Indonesia, and there were many evangelical Christian preachers who touted that as the will of God, that God was destroying them because they were idol worshippers, idolaters. Isn't that how you say that? Idolaters. There's a word in there somewhere. And so we have to actually like pay attention to these things. And I realize, okay, I can't be silent. If I have a voice that can help people recognize some of these things, I've got to use it because I did realize that, like, let's just say, like, we haven't found intelligent life yet, right? Outside of us, and even then, yeah. But let's say, just say one day an intelligent being does visit us. This can be incredibly problematic. If an intelligent being that seems to be able to do a little bit more than humans, e- exemplifying what we believe as a higher power or a greater power, if that being was coming with the expressed mission of destroying the planet, there are many people on this planet who would be convinced that this being was the God from their holy book or a servant of that God. That was a chilling thought, realizing that if we ever stumbled upon any being that met our biblical standard of what a God was, and let's be clear, it's not a high standard, that many would be tempted to not only worship it, but to assist it with malintent. That's kind of dangerous. I know it could be off in La La Land, but I think we need to think about that. And I've mentioned that a few times. And I think the proof of this, we don't have to wait for it to happen to see if it would happen. I think the proof of this is that we found no such being as of yet, no such evidence of a being as of yet. And we have already committed such atrocities in service to such being. That's something that I wanted to share, ripped directly from the pages of my mind. I hope it gave you something to chew on. I hope it brought some sense of value to your life. Now, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, join one of our community entry points, buy some merchandise, and consider volunteering to help us build intentional community. All right, that's all I have for now. Until next time, keep rising, stay progressive, and stay beautiful if you can. Holla at you.